Yeah, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming. Welcome to our panel on a very interdisciplinary and a very broad topic. My name is Frank Himpel, and I have a wonderful panel, 4 panelists with me. First, we have Mr. Jacob Ninan, we have Dr. Abdellah Cherkaoui, we have Professor Marcello Contestabile, and we have Manuel Heredia Ortiz. I'll quickly talk you through the structure of the session. We will have a few-minute introduction per panelist to express their views on the topic. After that, we will have a panel discussion to open the discussion also to the audience. And of course, this also might include some Q&A at the end of the session. So this is as per the structure of the session. And I would like to start asking Jacob to please commence with your introduction.
Can you hear me? Yeah. So my name is Jacob. I'm a co-founder for a company called Kottackal. The company actually has developed a platform which connects energy consumers and energy consumers, for example, charge the electric vehicle operators or electric vehicle owners with energy producers and distributors. So this can be utility companies or charge point operators. So this is a two-sided platform. The unique thing about the platform is that it is interoperable. It provides interoperable services between fuel types, between applications, between service providers, and is hardware agnostic. For example, you can have a Tesla charger interoperate with a Shell charger, making it very comfortable for both these companies to be comfortable that their customer information will not be leaked or will not be compromised. So this is a very interoperable platform. I'll pause here for the platform. Let me go into the topic of the interconnectedness between energy, environment, and the mobility piece. So this is, I think of it like a model where you have 3 dials. Let's say you have an energy dial, you have a mobility dial, and an environment dial. So when you tweak that energy dial, the other 2 dials automatically move. To give you an example, when you use fossil fuels for energy, for generating energy, you inevitably have an impact on the environment. Pollution, worse health outcomes, etc. Another example, we are moving towards an EV environment, electric vehicle environment. So you have energy grids which are today available in a particular way, but those grids are not, those grids need to be upgraded to effectively use for the EV usage that is planned. So that's environment with energy. And beyond these 3 pieces, imagine now we have technology, newer technologies ramping. So when I talk about energy, when I talk about technology, not only the normal data analytics or AI, but there are other technologies like battery technology, materials. There are technologies like hydrogen, is another fuel source. All these are moving in a very rapid pace. So these are going to affect 3 pieces, the 3: energy, environment, and mobility that we talked. So why should we care about it? First of all, it's good for the environment, it's good for health. That's for everyone. For the audience members who are entrepreneurs or businessmen, there are a few million-dollar businesses in this space, or maybe a few unicorns. For the academic people, there are huge white spaces in this field where no one is researching. I mean, I know this because we work in this field, and we have gaps in this area where people are not, there's no work happening in these areas. Because it's relatively new, there are things that need to be addressed. For the people who are in government, who are regulators, there is a public interest aspect to it. Clean air is a public interest. The security or the security of your grids, national grids, it's a government responsibility to ensure it's safe and secure. So it's an important point. For the students, I did look at the attendees. There are quite a few students attending it. I'm not sure whether students are there, but this is an area where there's a lot of innovation going to happen next 5-10 years. There's so much of innovation. This is a place the students should be. Let me pause here. I think that's that for now.
We appreciate it, Jacob. Thank you so much. Dr. Abdellah, if you'd like to continue, please.
Yeah, sure. Hello, everyone. I'm sorry that you had to cut your lunch short, probably, to be here at the first panel. My name is Abdellah. I've been active in the electrification of transport for the past 15 years. I started in 2009 as a founding member of an early stage visionary startup in the electric vehicle charging back then, which grew to one of the leading companies worldwide, ChargePoint, that sort of set up the vision of bringing together two ecosystems that were separated until then and that are now fusioning and merging. Mobility on one side and energy on the other. I continued this journey by also joining the founding team of Volta Charging, another electric vehicle charging company with a very innovative, different business model. Both companies we took public in 2020 and 2021 for ChargePoint and Volta Charging, respectively. Volta was acquired by Shell, as essentially energy companies are now starting to bring together different fueling or different energy fuelings as mobility and energy are coming and becoming and developing these ecosystems together. I am currently the co-founder and CCO of Aqualith Advanced Material. During the past years, I started looking at energy storage as another key piece of these ecosystems in terms of bringing together cleaner mobility with essentially electric vehicles, as well as cleaner energy with integration of renewables into the grid, thanks to energy storage. So this is where I come from, and I'm looking forward to discussing with my fellow panelists all the different aspects of
Thank you, Dr. Abdellah.
Mobility and energy.
Thank you so much. We appreciate. Professor Marcello.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Marcello Contestabile. I work at the Qatar Environment and Energy Research Institute, which is part of Ahmad bin Khalifa University, member of Qatar Foundation. So in case you're wondering, the institute is just a few, it's a short walk away from here. What you see on that side is Education City, and particularly the headquarters of Qatar Foundation. So we're very much local here. And so the institute I work for does mostly research and development work of energy environmental technologies. But the program that I lead actually does economics and policy research. We're looking at the challenges from an economic and policy perspective of the technologies, environmental and energy, that our colleagues are developing. And and among these technologies, there's obviously also electric vehicles. So my colleagues are mostly working on the infrastructure side, but they're also looking at the vehicles as well. And in my current job, we're also doing some work on electric vehicles. We have recently convened a workshop with national stakeholders to discuss the opportunities but also challenges of supporting the adoption of electric vehicles in Qatar, because this is a priority for the government, but there is still a lot of work to do on the policy side of things. And that led to a very interesting conversation, and I hope I'll be able to share some of that with you later. I've also been part of a study looking at the so-called rebound effects, or if you like, negative effects of autonomous vehicles. That was also with colleagues in Qatar, and maybe I will touch on that too. Although my current job means I'm looking at several technologies, in my past lives, I'm mostly focused on electric vehicles from different angles. I've worked in initially R&D myself, and then I worked in policy research in academia, other research organizations, consultancy, and also in government. And so I'm particularly happy to be here today to talk about a subject that is very close to my heart. And I will discuss if you like, the balancing energy, environment, and mobility, mostly from a policy perspective. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marcello. Now, Dr. Manuel, please.
Thank you, Frank. When I'm asked to introduce what we do, I normally start with a photograph of a generic traffic jam, and I challenge the audience to tell me where this picture was taken. And of course, it's a trick, because today over half the population, the world population, live in large, congested cities, and they spend hours in traffic jams with the problems that this brings with it, pollution, noise, frustration, and so on. We are Crisalion Mobility. We are a Spanish company who's developing advanced mobility solutions. So we are developing two projects. On one hand, a new type of aircraft, which is a hybrid between a helicopter and a conventional fixed-wing plane, fully electric. And on the other hand, we are developing technology to help in the transition towards autonomy in land vehicles. And I will probably speak a little bit more about that later. My name is Manuel Heredia. I am managing director of this company, Crisalion Mobility. We're based in Spain, but I will take the opportunity to announce that we have just created a subsidiary here in Qatar, Crisalion Mobility Qatar, because this is one of our strategic focus of growth, the Gulf region and Qatar in particular. I think on this discussion about mobility, energy, environment, these are very interlinked elements. Our position is that electrification is one step towards solving some of the problems that we have, but it's not enough. Therefore, moving towards autonomy in ground vehicles is important. Opening the third dimension, so to say, and starting talking about urban air mobility is another side of the equation. And one element that we believe is very important is taking care of the transition, because things will not happen overnight. There is a full ecosystem that we need to develop. There are many interconnected elements that need to work together, and therefore you need to prepare for intermediate steps or a transition phase that will probably last longer than we would like. So I'm hoping that we will be able to touch these topics in the panel.
Yeah, thank you so much, Manuel. So thank you, gentlemen, for the introduction. In order to kind of capture a very broad topic and to kind of narrow it down step by step, let's start with what you already mentioned, Manuel, namely the topic of interconnectedness, of interdisciplinary approaches that are required. And I'd like to have your view, gentlemen, on the topic of interconnectedness, interconnectivity, and of interdisciplinary approaches that we need to kind of narrow down the topic. So maybe please Jacob, if you like to start, and all of the other gentlemen to join in, please.
The idea of these three topics is that it has the ability to influence each other, and especially in a world which we imagine to be sustainable, there needs to be some planned way of taking these ideas forward. So I think one of the key areas, or one of the places to start with, would be governmental support, governmental regulation, overreach, etc. And especially for newer technologies, government has a part to play in this area. So if you look at the different markets worldwide, you see a lot of money being spent or provided in terms of subsidies, in terms of support for bringing these technologies to the market. And these are important aspects to start off the industry, but also in the next stage for the regulation, for the governance, and other parts of the ecosystem. I think the government role is a very important part to start with. Let me.
So, in terms of interconnectedness, I'm going to take an example actually that brings together energy and mobility, and that has very large amounts of opportunities, and it's what we call in the industry vehicle to grid. As we are electrifying our vehicles, they actually, as we have more and more of them connected, they become a very interesting resource to integrate renewable energy at the times when all these cars are plugged, and how they can support, alleviate, and actually provide much needed and also cheaper resources to deliver energy and green energy or renewable energy to homes when actually it would be more expensive to do that from the grid. This is one key example that I think is very interesting in illustrating this connectivity that's coming with the electrification of transport, as well as in the bigger, broader sense, the integration of renewables into the grid.
Yes, very good. And again, as I said earlier, I'm coming in from the policy perspective, so I would like to talk about how if you like, the motives, the drivers for wanting to support electric vehicles in this part of the world are connected with each other, and most importantly, how different parts of policy support have to be developed in a coordinated fashion. Otherwise, this might not work. So I think it's good to probably start from like a very basic question. Why would you want to support electric vehicles in this region? On paper, with access to cheap fossil fuels, there is no stringent need to replace oil with electricity in transport. So when discussing what drivers for technologies like electric vehicles in policy, normally one talks about energy security, environmental protection, and industrial competitiveness. So energy security applies particularly to those countries that are net importers of fossil fuels, because price shocks and supply disruption can have major economic impacts. But for the Gulf region, that's maybe not so, shouldn't be looked at that way. However, for countries like Saudi Arabia, for example, that have a big population and where domestic consumption of oil for transport is far from insignificant, reducing that consumption means that you can export more oil, that you have less foregone revenues. So it's a different perspective on the same problem. But I guess the environmental challenge definitely applies to all of the Gulf countries in different ways, as most of them committed to achieving net zero emissions by 2060. They will have to reduce emissions from transport to zero, pretty much, because there will be emissions from industry that are very hard to abate. So we're going to need clean technologies, zero-emission technologies from a greenhouse gas perspective, and electric vehicles definitely are the key one. And also, air quality is a problem in the Gulf cities. So the introduction of electric vehicles definitely benefits these countries from this perspective. But the last one, energy security, industrial competitiveness, is in a way even more important for some of these countries, because as they look to diversify away from the oil industry, they are looking at industries that are either building on the existing competitive advantages or that are complementary in nature. And again, taking the example of Saudi Arabia, major oil exporter, with global demand for oil projected to decrease quite substantially, even the next few years, even by 2030 or 2035, global oil demand might decrease by, say, 10 million barrels per day, which means 10%. And this could have a very major impact on oil prices. So diversifying the economy into the technology that is actually reducing the demand for oil is a good strategy to hedge bets. So again, to summarize, why are Gulf countries looking into supporting electric vehicles? It's because of economic diversification, first and foremost, and we have a few, our colleagues here on the panel, they are all looking to contribute to that with their efforts, and environmental protection. And then the question becomes, okay, so how do we make it happen? And the interconnectedness in terms of policy then comes in, because you want to find ways of supporting the development of elements of the EV value chain in the region, while also supporting the market. Because if you are building electric vehicles in the country, then you need to have a market for them. You cannot only build vehicles to export them to other continents. You can, of course, also export them to other continents, but the domestic market is a prerequisite for mass production of electric vehicles, or mass production of vehicles for that matter, because there is no such thing as an automotive industry in the Gulf yet. But China didn't have one and has developed one, so why can't we? So policy to support development of industry, coupled with policy to support adoption, which in turn involves supporting car buyers to, incentivizing car buyers to buy the cars, and also incentivizing the manufacturers to import, until at least the demand can be satisfied to a large extent by the national manufacturers. So I will leave it at that, and maybe we can go into more detail later.
Yeah, I think I'll go back to this idea of ecosystem, because what we're discussing here really is a deep transformation of our cities and even our societies, and it's not the effect of one actor or one company that's going to change everything. It's a combination of many efforts that need to be synchronized. Perhaps I'll give the example of the two projects that we developed. Perhaps it's even more patent, more tangible on the aircraft project. You need, of course, an aircraft, but then you need solutions for traffic management, air traffic management. If you want to have urban air mobility, you need to have the solutions we have today for traffic management are not enough. You need to go beyond that. You need you need to change the concept of maintenance. The maintenance of aircraft today is normally focused on large hubs, and aircraft travel long distances to go to these large hubs. Probably when we go to urban air mobility, we will move to a different model, more similar to what we do today with car workshops that are much more local. And this will change the dynamics, will change the, will generate local jobs that don't exist today. But then you look beyond, and you need to have, talking about energy, you need to have a power grid, and you need to be able to charge these vehicles. But there are more things that often are not visible at first sight. Things like insurance, for instance. Insurance is a business based on statistics. When you building something new, by definition, you do not have these statistics. So how do we engage with the insurance industry to make sure that this will not create a problem originally? So at Crisalion, we've been, since the beginning, very aware of this, and we've been engaging with actors from all these different parts of the ecosystem, infrastructure as well. It's another element. These new aircraft will be operating from vertiports. Vertiports are easier to build and cheaper to build than heliports or airports, but you need to build them, and you need to have a dense enough network of vertiports in a city for your product to be viable and useful. The same way, when you have an electric vehicle, you can buy one of these beautiful vehicles we've seen in the lobby, but if there is not a nice network of chargers in the country, you won't go very far. So, paraphrasing a colleague from a competitor, we are in a stage where this industry needs to cook the cake before we start thinking about splitting the cake. And I think this mentality of pushing all together, collaborating, and leaning on the regulator is fundamental.
Thank you so much. So I think what we see is that this is it's a complex topic, but we also see that it's a high-value industry that is kind of driving the efforts. This is about knowledge-based economy. So I think this is also, as to mention the regional aspect, something that complements the Qatar National Vision 2030. As we talk of knowledge-based economy, as we talk of high-value industries. And let's tackle this a little bit closer in the sense that we need to also perhaps think of how to come from like today's traditional mobility to this envisioned state of autonomous electric mobility. And we might perceive this as following some development stages. It might not happen overnight. It's a development process. And gentlemen, if I may, I'd like to have your take on this development process. How do we come from like today's traditional to the envisioned form of autonomous electric mobility, given that it's a high-value industry required and it's a knowledge-based economy? So maybe Manuel, if you'd like to take up on that first, please.
Thank you, Frank. I think, yeah, absolutely, I fully agree with you. The three journeys that we need to take. We need to make a journey in terms of technology. We need to make a journey in terms of public acceptance. And we need to make a journey as well in terms of confidence or trust of the regulator. And we need to do these three journeys in synchrony, okay? Let me take the example of autonomous vehicles for ground applications. We've seen the first large-scale pilots in some cities in the US, and we've seen how the technology is maturing fast, but still not perfect. And when I say it's not perfect, I don't mean that it's a dramatic failure and a car that's crashing. It's enough that it doesn't show enough assertiveness when it comes to entering a roundabout, or it's not. It doesn't have the agility to break the rule a little bit when you have to, and it's creating frustration on the drivers, on the rest of the human drivers, because they need to live with. There's the transition phase where they will have to live together with the human traffic. This is creating a rejection. We've seen in the last few months several events where population were reacting against these vehicles in these cities where there were large pilots, and it's caused the regulator to step back and lose. So we need to work on these three at the same time. This is why we're betting on intermediate steps, and we believe that it makes sense to have solutions to cover these gaps. We are betting on teleoperation, on having a human in the loop that provides a safeguard that helps with these situations where you cannot ask the AI to take decisions that a human can take. And it's helping build this, bridging the gap of the maturity of the technology. It's helping build this acceptance from the society and therefore the trust from the regulator. So this is one example where we need to focus on every step of the journey. We cannot dream that things will make a sudden jump from the situation we have today to an ideal situation later on, because life doesn't stop, and you need to be able to provide solutions that will accompany us every step of the way.
True. With regards to time, maybe just one more comment on this aspect, Marcello, please.
Very good. So you talked about the journey, and so the electric vehicle industry globally, it's well underway to becoming a mature industry. It's not a nascent industry anymore. But in this region, it still is. So I guess all I want to say is countries in the GCC are taking several steps. But there's a lot of challenges still remaining that require some clever thinking and strategic thinking. So from an industrial perspective, creating the electric vehicle industry, the GCC countries are busy investing in foreign companies, attracting them to manufacture in the region, also attracting direct foreign investment in the region in these technologies. And the challenge is to go from where we are today, where we have assembly plants, where cars are built based on parts that are manufactured and tested elsewhere, into a place where there is a regional supply chain that goes from the mining of the materials to building the components that go into the vehicles. So that is a long journey, for sure. From a consumer perspective also, because we have in Qatar and the UAE, we're talking about hundreds of electric vehicles. In Saudi, we're talking thousands, but still it's a drop in the ocean. So a very long way also on the adoption side.
Thank you, Marcello. Also, with regards to us having an audience, thank you for being here. Are there any questions from the audience at this time? And we'll be happy to implement them. Yes, please. Do we have perhaps a microphone for the gentleman? And if I may ask that you please introduce yourself with your name and your affiliation, please. And to whom you address the question, please. Thank you so much.
Thank you. My name is Mohammed Zubair. I'm an entrepreneur into the field of EV battery manufacturing technology. Okay, sorry for this. So my question to the panel, thank you for the wonderful insight and your information, which was very helpful. What I was trying to understand from the main heading is balancing mobility, energy, and environment. So is it correct to make this assumption today that the motivation for entering into this electrification is more of a commercial aspect than the environmental benefit? The reason why I'm asking is, if you see the interest and the electrification in terms of making it happen is more of the countries that are importing more of oil. For example, larger countries like China. Why did they get into this electrification? Making one of the, safe assumption is to make their energy security, as Dr. Marcello was like indicating to it, compared to the Gulf countries where like they are mostly into exporting oil.
To whom do you like to address the question, please?
Sure. The way I look at it, actually, to this question of whether it's the environment or commerce, both are tied together. We know what we have to do to stop and reverse global warming. Paris Agreement has defined the objectives for every country. What hasn't been implemented is really how much investments have to be put to get there. And so, to your point, this is very transformative. It's transformative in local, national, and global economies. It's transformative in geopolitical balances. And it's also very transformative at our level because this is really an experiment in social change. And we have today, if we look at transport, we have freedom with our cars, and we, all of us, have this human thing that is we feel constrained by change, and we look at all the constraints. How far can an electric car take me? How quickly can it charge? Are questions that actually are not that important once the infrastructure is set in place. But that infrastructure takes a lot of investments, and at the local level, at national level, and globally.
So with regards to the time, I know that supposedly we might take one more question from the audience at this time, if there is one question. Please. Maybe we can just transfer the microphone to the gentleman.
Thank you so much. Thank you for this panel discussion. It was very, very useful to us. I'm Abdelhamid Mohammed, the head of Smart City Department at ECG. My question is to Dr. Marcello about the policies itself, because I believe we always talk about electrification, but we don't talk about the source of electricity that will be feeding the cars. So my question is related to the policies that can work in connecting those two factors together.
Okay, thank you. So first, generally speaking, the push to reduce the carbon content of electricity is already there in most countries. So it's a synergy between policies that are already in place. I don't see a major challenge generally, even in the region, where renewables are being introduced rapidly, maybe in some specific countries in Asia where coal is still used. Perhaps you might be in a situation where your electric vehicle today might emit more CO2 per kilometer than a conventional car would be. But I don't think that is something that will continue indefinitely. But there is a clearly interesting link between introducing renewables and introducing electric vehicles, because electric vehicles can also be used as a load on the grid that can be managed. So by managing charging, not only do you address one major problem of electric vehicles, which is the stress that they can put on the grid if they're all charging in an uncontrolled way, and if they all charge at home, for example, when people come back from work. You might have a peak at 5, 6 p.m. That is something that could be a challenge for the grid and also for the power generation. Managing charging helps you overcome this, but it can also help you manage intermittent generation like renewables. And clearly this is something that applies in different ways to different parts of the world. So the same logic might not apply to the Gulf, which applies to, say, Northern Europe. In the Gulf, I would say, just to give you some generic thoughts on this, considering that the main source of renewable power is solar, and considering that the peak of generations happen during the day, in the middle part of the day, if you want to use electric vehicles to balance the grid, then you would have to shift much of the charging in the middle of the day rather than at night. And this is not what usually happens, because car users, EV users normally tend to charge more at home. But you can incentivize charging in the workplace. Studies done in California show that it's not that difficult to convince EV users to charge at work if, given the right incentives. So yes, that's one possible way of linking the two.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for having been part of this session. We do appreciate your attendance. Also, thank you very much, Dr. Manuel, Professor Marcello, Dr. Abdellah, and Mr. Jacob. In order to just summarize the key findings, maybe we saw that this is a very broad interdisciplinary topic. It requires multidisciplinary actions from various angles, be it policy, be it government, be it industry, be it research. We also saw that there is maybe a step-by-step approach required also with like test beds or dedicated areas, confined areas to start with, trying to develop and implement the technology. And last but not least, also to touch base on this topic. It's not only about technology, it's also about the social acceptance, the behavior of the passengers, the behavior of the people to kind of adopt this. So it will be a challenge ahead, not only from a technology perspective, but also from like a behavioral part, like a soft factor part. We'll be happy to explore this together with you in more detail. Thank you again for having been part of the session. Have a good day. Thank you.